Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody, and welcome to our Threat Breakdown Tuesday with my co-host, my good buddy, my good friend, Jason Miller. How you doing, sir?
Hey, good morning.
It's afternoon for some people. As Hyperwork would say, good time zone. Good time zone.
Good time zone. That's a good one. I like that. I'm going to use that.
That is a good one. Yeah. Our friend Hyperwork is one of our few viewers from, oh my God, Denmark, I think it is. Did I get it right, Hyperwork? Denmark. We've got a couple folks that are kind of in that Netherlands, Denmark, Sweden region over there, and he's very
I'd love
notorious.
To come visit Denmark someday.
Yeah. Let's get a couple clients over there. Let's get some clients over there.
Yeah.
Now, hold on. I before we get into the rules, I want to piggyback a conversation that Jason and I were having in the green room that I thought was super important enough for us to continue on publicly before we get into the threat brief. You had talked about you were talking about, you know, your values, your core values, beliefs at BitLift, and how you believe in helping your customers. And, you know, you had said a comment where you were like, I really hope that, like, at some point, sometime, somewhere, somebody acknowledges the efforts that you and the team do. And I kind of hit you with a little Neal truth bomb, and I said, no, that'll never happen. You know, maybe that's a little cynicism. Maybe that's just a Neal being, you know, the cynic across the world. And you carried on to talk about this stoking of the fire mentality that you have. And I've stopped you there, and that's the part that I wanted you to talk about. So you know, let's piggyback that conversation. You're a founder, you're CEO, you've been running BitLift for 9 years. You know, after 9 years, you're not a billionaire. You're not, you know, out, you know, buying $48 million yachts or whatever it is, you know, causing people to drudge up canals across Europe just so your boat can fit under the bridge, whatever the statement is there. So how do you keep that fire stoked? Like, you know, I'm sure everybody around you is like always singing your praises and whatnot, right?
Oh yeah, right. Or calling you a name, you know, or telling you that, you know, like anybody else, we are not immune to, you know, customers or people, you know, wanting more out of you than what they're paying for, or what's written in the scope of work.
Yeah.
Or, you know, I think in humanity, the problem that has happened here is that, I think negotiation is different than you saying, you know what, I'm going to hire you for a job. We're going to pay you, you know, $70,000 a year for said job. And I think humanity has gotten away from, like, the reason why people work is because they need to be able to eat, live, and things like that, and take care of their family. But it should not be, and I'm even realizing this, that it should not be to just work 20 hours a day and get 4 hours of sleep. And and that sort of thing. But because what all that you're doing is you will get to the end of the road, whatever end of the road is for you. And there is not going to be somebody that is going to be like there, but like, you made it, you did it.
You worked more hours than anybody else.
than anybody else. And, or that you have like more money in the bank than so-and-so.
Yeah.
Or your cars are the cleanest cars, out of everybody else. And so, and I've just been pondering this a lot lately, and this gets into the stoking of the fire is like, I'm not saying, please hear me on this, is to not be passionate about what you do.
Right.
But it's that if you're looking for somebody else to stoke your fire and to be cheering you on and to be this, whatever maybe thing that you have in your head, that you're doing what you do for somebody else. Like, and I mean that in a way that like you're looking for gratification or you're looking for rewards or encouragement from somebody else, then you're probably starting off from the wrong angle here. That I would really encourage you to think about why you're doing what you're doing is for somebody else that maybe can't do it for themselves. Right. And in that we do a lot of things because, and even like you said, running BitLift now for 9 years, we're a strong, solid company. We have an amazing team, but we are not doing it because somebody else is like stoking our fire or cheering us on, or that, when we get to the end of whatever the road is, like whether it's an exit or we continue to run the company for another 30 years and it is alive and well on its own. And maybe in 30 years from now, I'm no longer the CEO and somebody else is. But the whole idea here is that you've got to have the right motivation. You've got to have the right motivation that comes from inside. And I think that's one of the things that draws like you and I together is that we aren't motivated by money per se or yachts and all the rest of it. It's that we are motivated by the idea that we get up every day and help other people fight the cyber crimes that they're unable to help themselves do, right? So either through augmentation or through, through helping them understand what is the challenge that they're fighting today.
And I would argue, like you talk about stoking, like I would argue after 9 years, you're still on the forefront of catching jabs to the face of people that would love to see you fail. Whether it's customers who were dissatisfied with some part of your business, whether it's competitors that you've pushed out of deals that you've won over them, whether it's, disgruntled employees, nobody would ever leave BitLift, but if there was ever a disgruntled employee, right, you faced, quite the opposite of that stoking of the fire, but it has been your core values and your mission, and it's been your self-drive that's allowed you to persevere through that.
100%. I'm of the opinion that you could give somebody the best solution that is possible today, whatever that solution might be today, and they will still find a way to be unhappy or to be critical about it or to pick apart something that you're like, my gosh, we have worked tirelessly to produce this solution that's in front of you. And here, the first thing that's coming out of your mouth is not praise or, excitement or like a sigh of relief that this is going to solve the problems and challenges that it does. But here you're being critical, and I just, that is, and I hope people hear, like, I'm not trying to start today's stream off, Debbie Downer, but just that it's like, I think that we should take a moment and take a deep breath and be like, look at all that we have achieved personally and through the career or through the business that you work in. It's so important, you know.
It is.
You won't make everybody happy in this world.
Yep.
That's customers, that's partners, that's employees, that's team members, that's everybody. I mean, at some point in time, you will find somebody that is unhappy with what you're doing.
Yep.
And you're like, well, look at this long laundry list of stuff that we are doing for you, but yet you're telling me it's not good enough.
Yeah.
I'm like, so what I do is I walk away from those situations, pray for that person, and I hope whatever they're going through in their personal life resolves itself.
Well said. Well said. I have lots of thoughts on this as well. I think that's one of the reasons that you said it best, Jason, why you and I align so well in content is, and I remind the audience, Jason is not paying to be on this stream. Jason has never paid, Cyber Insecurity a dime. As a matter of fact, Jason continues to give his own money to give training certificates away. I got an email from Hannah before this stream for more Try Hack Me vouchers. So this is a reminder for everybody to hop on over into Discord, join the giveaways channel. There's actually a giveaway running right now for Try Hack Me vouchers. And Jason, always appreciate not just you, but Noah and Hannah's time in prepping the content for this stream, showing people what it's like to give back to the community, as well as giving back with the Try Hack Me vouchers and everything else. So we always appreciate
and
you.
And Tim helped this week in putting together the content, and it's amazing. So we've got some amazing content prepped for you guys today.
Let's get into that. Let's hit the rules really fast, Jason. And just since we spent a little bit of time, pontificating on the morals of life, I'll do the super fast version of the rules for chat. No racist, sexist, misogynistic, elitist, or otherwise toxic behavior in chat. We have a zero tolerance policy for that. We do have moderators in chat who are always there to keep chat free of racist, sexist, misogynistic, elitist, and otherwise toxic behavior. That does not mean that we stifle chat in any way. We highly encourage you to talk about the things that Jason and I are talking about inside of chat. Ask questions. Feel free to ask questions. One of the benefits of these streams being live is that you do get access to Jason and I live to ask these questions as we're dissecting this information for you. So drop your questions at any point in time in chat. Everybody, the moderators will grab it, and push it up on the screen just like that. We'll see it. We'll answer it. We'll talk about it in kind. I apologize for reaching across the screen. I rearranged my desk and I just realized that my Stream Deck is all the way over there. My Go XLR is all the way over there. So that was a shitty design on my part. So I'm going to have to rearrange the desk again. With that being said,
your OCD is kicking in.
Dude, my OCD is so kicking in. Real quick actually, I'll do this after the stream. I'll talk about content after the stream. With that being said, the big news of the day, Jason, and I love, this is why I love having you and specifically the function that you guys play at BitLift as an MDR company on the stream, is we had a pretty major zero day that happened in the last week that kind of took the global stage by storm. I wouldn't call it WannaCry level, but it was pretty significant. There was a lot of exploitation that happened in the last week.
And it's so funny that this is happening. Like, I think the stars, the moon, and the solar system is aligning, because like the streams just before this, we were talking about 0 days and vulnerabilities. And we were like, oh, I hope people won't be, bored and won't. They're talking about vulnerabilities.
Yeah.
And then here, like the biggest 0 day. And then I was like, part of me was like, do people still use SharePoint? And then I had to go.
Let alone SharePoint on-prem. Let alone SharePoint on-prem.
Oh man! So
I'm glad I wasn't the only one, because that was 100% mine. I was like, are we making a big deal about SharePoint? Are there really that many on-prem deployments of SharePoint still?
So, there really are. You come to find out, and you use AI to kind of, AI, Google, and some other your favorite search engine. Let's do it at that.
Yeah.
And go figure out like how many on-prem SharePoint deployments still exist.
Yeah.
And it was a surprising number, man.
I think one stat I saw was like there was like 100,000 government sites that had been compromised as part of this SharePoint exploitation effort.
Yeah. Yeah. And so some of the cool stuff that we're going to like get into today
Yeah.
is, and this is why, like, so, you know, yes, BitLift is an MDR company, and I'm coming to you guys from that perspective. But think about it from this perspective. I'm not trying to say, hey, you know, use us type of thing. But what I am trying to encourage you to do is in the landscape that we are in today, you must be vigilant. You must be monitoring and trying to detect and asking yourself, is that activity, behavior normal, not normal? Because we cannot, in this time frame that we live in today, and I would say even going forward, we cannot just rely on and rest our laurels on the idea that the software that's running in our environment is safe and secure because we ran our vulnerability scanner, or we had a pen test or a purple team activity or something, you know, recently.
Yeah.
I would encourage you, and I'm sort of, I won't let the cat out of the bag here too much, but what I would just encourage you to do is to like listen to the content that we're gonna deliver to you guys today, and there's always two sides. Look at those balloons.
You got to turn off. You got to turn off those emojis too.
I got to turn off these emojis, man. Maybe somebody can help me turn off these emojis.
Yeah. Well, before you get into that though, because like I think what you're hitting on is something I want to make sure we cover first before we cover the technicals about it, right?
Yep.
And this was a conversation that you and I had as we were prepping for this stream, where it's like when the advisory came out, right? It was 0-day across all SharePoint, blah, 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 blah. And then there was a delay. And then we saw a post from Microsoft. And the post from Microsoft was, hey, this only affects on-prem SharePoint instances. Office 365 is not impacted. And I want to talk about what wasn't said in that advisory.
Yeah. So this is our feeling or our opinion.
Sure, absolutely.
Or mine, right? You have yours.
Yep.
But look at the timeline, and also look at what I would have been a whole lot more comfortable with is that if Microsoft would have said, hey, this only applies to on-premise SharePoint because it runs X, Y, and Z software on-prem, and out in the Microsoft 365 cloud, a different version of the software is running. Example X, Y, and Z.
But why would you have felt more comfortable with that? What is it that you think, or that you're hypothesizing wasn't said because of the way that they phrased it?
Well, one, I can't believe that they're running 2 tracks of the software.
Right.
I can't believe that they're running. Right. I mean, like they started out. I'm from the days of when Exchange was on-prem.
Right.
You know,
right.
Go back to before 2010, and Exchange was mostly on-prem.
Yeah.
You know, and then they came out with Exchange Online.
Yeah.
And what was it? Well, it was Exchange that was on-prem, just hosted by Microsoft.
Right.
Right. And so the problem that you had on-prem was the same problem that you had with Microsoft Online.
Yeah.
You know, Exchange Online. And so think about this, though. SharePoint on-prem, SharePoint on-prem and SharePoint Online, I'd like to hear from Microsoft where they say, oh, yeah, we run 2 tracks of the software. We maintain 2 tracks of the software.
Let's put a really fine point on this. What you're hypothesizing, and this is Jason's opinion, and I just happen to coexist with my opinion as well, is that they're running the same version on-prem as the latest software package that they would be running in Office 365. And so your really, really fine point is the delay in reporting from Microsoft was long enough for them to patch their Office 365 SharePoint that was also vulnerable to the same 0-day that everybody else had in their environment.
I mean, it makes total sense. Patch online because they have control of it.
Yeah.
And then release the news announcement after the patch. So it makes them look good.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And to furthermore support my hypothesis in this is that if you think about it, they went through and fixed all of the way that people log in, and they made the on-prem software the exact same logon process as online. Right?
Yeah.
You think about it.
Yeah.
Think about how even like Windows 10, Windows 11,
Yeah.
and if you want to add a user,
Yeah.
right, you now have to make sure that user is the email address that syncs up with Microsoft Online.
So I think
right?
that the underlying message that I'm hearing from you about all this is, if you thought, oh, this doesn't apply to me because I'm Office 365 in the cloud, you're only 50% informed about this threat.
I think so.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's get into it.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the details of this SharePoint vulnerability.
Yeah. So when you think about it, last week, I think it was over the weekend of, gosh, what were the exact dates? What was it? The 19th?
Yeah.
The 19th to the 20th?
Yeah, I was going to say last weekend it was.
Yeah,
because you can only because you can only release 0 days. I want chat to understand that you can only release 0 days Friday afternoon during prod pushes or on the weekend.
Yeah, when everybody is trying to enjoy a nice summer weekend,
right, or before a holiday or during a holiday,
and you're like, oh crap, is my data being exfiltrated out of our SharePoint environment right now? So. I'll leave that right there.
Yeah.
But so with all this buzz around the exploit, their communications was focused on premise. We, however, have our beliefs that this at one point probably did exist on M365 cloud hosted version as well. They probably just ran out and patched it.
Yeah.
But anyhow, so what we did as a company though is we focused in on the traffic for web servers and the logs in the web servers. And we looked at the HTTP GET requests that you would see in that log activity, right? At first, we were focused on SharePoint servers that existed inside of our customer base. But one thing that, and remember, there's always two sides to every story. And this is why you as cybersecurity people, you can't believe the first thing that is said. You have to always question it, right? Question it in a healthy way. But what we found out is we saw a bunch of requests, and Neal, I shared this with you, so I'm not sure if you're going to copy and paste some of the stuff.
We can definitely copy and paste some of it, but you're still going to post these to GitHub, right?
Yep. This will get posted to GitHub. But we saw the GET requests, and they had a certain flow, layouts /15 /spintail 0.aspx, blah, blah, blah. And then what we even started seeing was some IP addresses that we were looking through. There were some from some foreign countries. But as all that was happening, we started also seeing that wide scanning of this was even happening to Linux servers. And so you'd have to ask yourselves, like, why were they scanning Linux servers as well as when we knew that this was a SharePoint vulnerability, right? And a SharePoint 0-day. Well, I am of the opinion, and we're of the opinion, my team, that the exploit was so large, and the the hackers, the people that were working on this and said, "Hey, I want to go try and find this." They were scanning everything, but they were scanning it to try and find all of the SharePoint servers that they could quickly. Well, if you didn't know exactly where the SharePoint servers lived,
Yeah.
you would be scanning everything. And so we even seen inside of web server logs on Linux servers, this activity that was looking for the paths of SharePoint paths.
Almost like
on the server.
almost like they were looking for any remnants of SharePoint, even if it was on a Linux server, maybe it was a shared library, maybe it was a shared path, maybe it was a virtual host. Like they were looking for mass attack across the entire globe on this one.
And we seen the scanning happening from multiple locations, DigitalOcean, from multiple countries, that allowed these people to spin up large amounts of wide net scanning, and allows you to sweep for these vulnerable SharePoint servers pretty quickly. You're chugging through lots of public web servers, right?
A lot of this, I think the way that this oftentimes gets framed by folks is, right, a beat the patch, right? You know that Microsoft's going to release a patch to this. You know that it's pretty significant. And so everybody in the adversaries are pulling their fire alarm and saying, we need everybody awake. We've got to go exploit this thing right now because we have no idea how long we're going to have access until the patch comes through.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, so let's take, for instance, conservative numbers. If you think that there's 100,000 SharePoint servers out there that are vulnerable to this 0-day, and let's be honest, you probably have the next 72 hours. You maybe have 3 days, 4 days, 5 days with this.
Yeah.
You are going to go after this hard and heavy. And so that's why we believe what we saw was, why were they hitting this way? Well, the attackers knew that scanning everything, they weren't trying to be subtle about it, right? Or quiet about it. And they were just looking for anything that replied with those SharePoint paths. And then if it did reply with that SharePoint path, well, then they would move on to their next stage, right?
So how much noise does this, like when we're talking about this from a cyber defense perspective, does it make it harder for you to sift through the noise to look for actual exploitation when you see this level of mass scanning like that?
Well, yeah, all of a sudden you've got a lot of activity happening on all of the web servers that are happening, right? Whether it's Linux or Microsoft web servers, your web servers are now getting widely scanned and asked of a whole bunch of requests. And it does increase your log volume and sifting through the amount of material. But what you need to do is focus your detections, and you need to focus your vigilant activities on specific requests, HTTP GETs, and where is the activity coming from? What's the path look like inside of that HTTP GET request? And then allow you to focus and fine tune your work. So it looks sort of like a funnel. You know, when you start out, you're asking a lot of questions and you've got a lot of activity. But as you hone in your activity, the funnel gets smaller and your activity gets smaller near the bottom.
You're really talking about a threat hunting process at this point in time.
Yes. Yeah, it's a threat hunting process because one is you need to know about all the SharePoint servers or web servers that are involved in your environment. And for instance, did web servers that you had that were Windows machines, did they ever have SharePoint installed on them before, and were they repurposed? You start asking yourselves a lot of questions at that point.
Yeah. So it was a long weekend for BitLift on this.
Yeah, I mean, our team worked pretty tirelessly on making sure that our customers were informed and that they were protected. The awesome thing is that none of our customers were exploited with this. The customers that did have SharePoint, we worked with them to secure their environment, um, and then worked with them to make sure that they got the patches as quick as possible applied. That when Microsoft did make them available after a period of time,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. Let's talk about that a
but
little bit, right? Because I think that that's worth noting. And again, like we're not going to go into deep dive on the IOCs, folks. I did put you can go to the BitLift GitHub page. You can use the exclamation point IOCs in chat to get the link to BitLift's GitHub page, and they've got the list of the IOCs that they saw and that they were hunting for, whether those are the same or not as what Microsoft published and Unit 42 published and whatnot. You do your due diligence on that, but I think that comes to a point, Jason, where it's like because I remember you texted me about this, and there was a gap there between when the notification happened and as the community was trying to get IOCs together for people to start hunting for this. So what do you do? What is it that you do as a response effort where you've got a 0-day drop, you know that it affects SharePoint, you're probably light on IOCs, you're probably light on TTPs. Like, walk us through what that step process is as you're trying to do that global response, having very, very little information that you've got to go start hunting for.
yeah, I mean, when you don't have IOCs and you don't have the community quite knowing exactly what they're hunting for, but you know that it involves SharePoint. So you start with what you know, and you say, okay, where are all of our SharePoint assets? In which customers do they exist? What's their machine names? What's their IP addresses? What's all that?
But that's easy because you got a CMDB though.
Right. Yeah. Every customer's got a CMDB,
and it's fully accurate, up to date.
It's fully accurate, fully up to date. I feel like you're resurrecting another stream that we did, but
I'm just poke the bear. Just poke the bear a little bit more.
Poking the bear, man. The thing is you need to know where those assets are.
Yeah.
You need to ask yourself, how far behind are they, as far as patches and updates, and then you need to start looking at, okay, are we getting in all the logs from those machines? Just verify and validate real quickly. Are we getting in all of the web server logs from those machines? If you are, cool. Well, now you can start to look at, are there any weird requests that have come in, say, the last 24, 48 hours, last several days, last week, right? Is the log volume any higher? Is it any lower? What does it look like? And then start to deep dive into those machines and actually look at the logs, because if you don't have detection methods for a 0-day, which is sort of difficult because you don't have IOCs and you don't know exactly what you're looking for. So there is some manual intervention on the front end. But once you figure out, like, oh, this is the path that we're looking for, these are the things in the logs that we're looking for, well, now all of a sudden you can go over and you can write a detection methodology and then apply that globally and start to see if this is hitting across any of the servers. And that's how we could actually tell. We could back up, okay, wait a minute. They were scanning not only SharePoint servers, but they were scanning all web servers. And that's when we realized, wow, this is a very wide net campaign that the criminal hackers are going after. And it was fast and it was heavy. And so you just want to have a process of elimination when you are working this, when you have no IOCs in the beginning.
I imagine, keep me honest on this. I imagine, like, if you're doing logging appropriately, right? Let's tabletop this one for a second. If you're doing logging appropriately across multiple pieces of server infrastructure, if you see an HTTP GET request for clearly a SharePoint artifact that's going against a Linux server, that probably acts as an early indicator and warning as to what it is you're hunting for in proper, SharePoint infrastructure.
100%. That is, you should note that and start to kind of deep dive into, like, where are they going with this? What's the next steps potentially with them? Where does it coming from? That's the other thing is if you know majority of your SharePoint activity is happening within these areas, right? Why is all of a sudden, your SharePoint activity, file pass responses, that type of thing happening from third countries, third world countries, outside the U.S. or outside your area, right?
Yeah.
Knowing that not all of our listeners are in the U.S., but if it's coming from outside of the known areas that you would expect it from, well then, okay, so then you have to deep dive in. What was the request? Look at the logs and figure out the HTTP gets, the requests, and things like that, and start to deep dive into the nuts and bolts of the traffic and the activity.
I think that that's worth mentioning, right? Because one of the things that I think we see a lot in the comments section whenever stuff like this happens, right, is, well, why aren't you just blocking all traffic from China or Russia or Iran or stuff like that, right, as it comes about? I mean, let's talk about the reality of like doing mass entire, AS blocking or entire region blocking or stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, we find out that it's not always that cut and dry easy.
Mm-hmm.
There are some times where if you work at a company of some size, you're selling your product and service to other countries. We have lots of customers that not only sell their products and services, and their employees are working for the company, not only in the U.S., but also in other countries as well,
Mm-hmm.
Canada,
Mm-hmm.
and so you can't just blanket block, these countries all the time. You have to go through and figure out exactly what services are being used publicly from other countries and which ones aren't, and go through these, sometimes each one line by line, which takes time, and it's a little tedious. So we get a lot of people that shy away from it and sort of run with the risk of like, well, we can't block those countries because, and let's be honest here, right? So a lot of customers do work in China, Taiwan, India, and this type of thing. And so then, but however, DigitalOcean
Mm-hmm.
also does as well.
Right.
And so you and I, with a credit card, can go and spin up DigitalOcean resources.
$7 for a micro instance on DigitalOcean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you can pick which country you want it to run from.
Yeah.
And so it's extremely hard to like go say, well, if your company does business with India, you can't just block the India traffic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think also that represents too operational overhead, because like if you've ever had to do firewall rule validation, if you've ever had to do firewall rule checks where you've either added rules or checked rules or been part of an ARB, an architectural review board, where you've had to review firewall rules and stuff like that. Now you're talking about applying them to a web proxy and doing that exact same process twice over as you're going to do it through a web proxy. That's an operational overhead. The more you try to block, the more granular you try to block, the more operational overhead it is for you.
Go get your favorite, caffeine
induced beverage,
and you're going to be there for a while. I mean, I've even seen some very skilled, sophisticated people with some scripts to help them augment this, but it's still tedious.
There's some chatter going on in chat right now where they talk about blocking well-known VPNs and Tor nodes and stuff like that. Is that, how does that rank on like probably a best practice, even ahead of a zero-day effort like this with SharePoint? Like, what about that from like a best practice perspective?
From a best practice, this is something that you want to get ahead of time. Mm-hmm. Yes. If there are known bad activities coming from Tor servers and VPN services that you as a company that you don't believe that you're going to let operate or communicate with your environment, you should be denying that traffic ahead mm-hmm. of these types of situations. That is best practices, a great recommendation to do, so that you're not opening up yourself to the $7, $5 VPN service that lets you go and just broker some activity.
But let's be honest too. Back to our $7 server. Somebody could spin up a $7 DigitalOcean instance, do a GitHub pull on OpenSSH, or excuse me, OpenVPN, and spin up a,
Yep.
a VPN instance on a DigitalOcean server inside of inside the US, and it wouldn't be Proton or Nord or anything like that.
Welcome to cybersecurity.
Yeah, exactly.
Like that is like, you better keep your defenses. That's why I absolutely. So this is what the thought that comes to mind is when people are like, cybersecurity is insurance. No, no, it's not, because I never heard anybody say having defenses was like insurance.
Right.
You tell me that keeping the locks locked on your home or your garage door shut or locking your car before you go into the retail store is called insurance.
I was
No.
gonna say, can I use that as a write off then? If I've got all these home defensive measures, I'm like, can I use that to
Yeah.
decrease my homeowner's insurance now?
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. But like, you must have good defenses, and your defenses must be sharp.
Yeah.
And um, and you're probably coming back to how we started out today's conversation, is you're probably never going to have sharp enough. Like,
Mm-hmm.
this is a journey, and you may never arrive.
Mm-hmm.
You may retire, and still feel like, I never arrived. There was never a dull moment. There was never a point where we were like, oh my gosh, our defenses are so good. We can, because something will change. We live in a time frame right now where software is released at AI speed.
Oh God, yes. Look, do you want to talk about the T
And
breach?
go ahead.
I mean,
You know,
Jason makes a valid point, right? And this is again, this is an emerging one that just happened over the weekend. There's a web application or a mobile application that had all the best intents of the world when it was developed, right? It was supposed to be a safe place for women to, or under, represented minorities to be able to safely interact socially, with other folks out there from a dating perspective. And so they had uploads of IDs, they had uploads of GPS locations, they had all sorts of personal and private data from these underrepresented, groups on their platform that ultimately was in a completely and totally public S3 bucket with zero protections on it. And it is largely believed that occurred because it was a vibe-coded mobile application out there. And that's not to say this is not a referendum on vibe coding. I am still a huge proponent that I think that is going to change the software development landscape. But it's to Jason's point, where that is how quickly you can go from idea to production in today's IT world.
yeah. And you even see this, like, what's not being talked about is full transparency of, like, Microsoft, Google, or Amazon, or you pick the software technology name that you want to use in this representation here. But what is not being talked about is how much the software today is being developed by AI at rapid speed, whether it's being checked for cybersecurity or not, right? And whether the proper precautions post that software going into production is still being validated on the architectural design that used to happen, right?
Yeah.
So you talk about an architectural design in a review board and reviewing these things. Well, why, you'd have to ask yourself, well, then why wasn't that software in an open S3 bucket?
Yeah. Well, you saw Beard say it earlier. Like how is that still a thing? Like this has been a problem for a decade almost now.
for decades, and I'm almost for sure. Like, fact check me on this, but I'm almost for sure if you start an S3 bucket today, it's closed by default.
It is.
Whereas, years ago when this whole thing was brand new, it used to be open by default.
Yep.
but now it's closed by default.
So that means that
So
somebody had to, real quick, Chad, just in case you need a super fine point on that, Chad, somebody had to click a button to make that S3 bucket open to the entirety of the internet.
Open to the public, yes. And so think about this. Like, I know that we still have, like, we're already 48 minutes in. Holy crap. There's like so much to talk about here, but one thing that I want to drive home to you guys today and think about this is that we cannot in our modern era of software and infrastructure and systems, we cannot move forward without this mentality. And the mentality is that our environment probably most likely has a 0-day or has a vulnerability in it.
You should assume today, walk away from this stream today and assume breach and assume that you have some 0-day that has yet to be discovered in any software you have in the company.
It's just not announced yet. And by the way, that software company is probably going to cover their rear with a patch and then an announcement.
Yeah.
Because they don't want to look bad.
Yeah.
Right. And so very rarely in this day and age do you see somebody that comes out with an announcement, right, and then says in a day or 2 or 3 we'll have the patch.
Yeah.
That's a rare case today.
Yeah.
Because they don't want to look bad.
Yeah.
So
and there will inevitably be so again, I like putting really fine points on what Jason's saying, right? So I'll put on my offensive hat for my days at the agency and doing red team and stuff like that. The reason that people put out patches, these companies rarely find their own 0-days, rarely find their own vulnerabilities. They are rarely so self-aware that they're like, oh shit, we should probably fix that. Somebody has told them, somebody has disclosed it, there has been some bounty, right?
Yep.
Or there is threat intelligence that indicates that it's being exploited in the wild. Those are how software companies become aware that there is a problem. And so if that's how they're becoming aware, then there is probably active exploitation that is happening against that software infrastructure.
Yes.
Which means you're already compromised. Back to our assumed breach mentality.
You're already compromised.
Yeah.
So this is the thing. You'd say, okay, that's a whole bunch of scary crap. But this is the job that we're called to.
Right.
We are called to protect an environment where you don't always know everything. And you have to sit there and say, I probably have open backdoors, open vulnerabilities that I just don't know about yet because some company hasn't announced it, right? Mm-hmm. And so I need to have the lenses and the mentality on that I have to protect an environment that is open right now.
Yeah.
Through a method. And I'm not talking about it necessarily has to be an open port or a vulnerable username and password. But I'm talking about you need to have eyes and ears on your environment and treat it as that it is potentially breached now, or it's going to be breached today or tomorrow, and it's going to be from some unknown source.
And right? let's again, let me bring this back around to a finer point. God, that's going to be my saying of the stream today, is bring this around with a finer point. Like, we're talking about cloud vulnerabilities today. We're talking about more open S3 buckets with this T app. We're now introducing new technology. We've introduced vibe coding, right, as being the primary CI/CD method in which applications are getting developed. But now we're also introducing LLM infrastructure. We're introducing more tech debt, more tech stack as part of those AI advancements. You and I have had numerous conversations about this. I had numerous conversations with my peers in the industry. Yeah. AI is moving so fast that it is hard to keep up with the technology, with the defensive controls. The defensive controls don't keep up with the advancement of it. And so we just continue to add in layers and layers and layers upon challenges around the technological advancements and investments that most organizations make.
And this is where I believe you at your organization, you guys need to be having
We're talking to you, chat. We're talking to you, chat.
Yeah. you need to be having the conversation. All of this that we're talking about, all of this AI, the vibe coding and developing in AI and all of these things are bleeding edge.
Yes.
We used go back 10 years ago, and in a previous company, we used to talk about, you know what? We like the forward thinking software and technology that's coming out, but we have a business to run and we need the business to be solid, steady.
Yeah.
There are employees that rely on this place for a solid, steady paycheck, right? And so, although we liked the bleeding edge technology, we could not put the bleeding edge technology into production in fear that it would cause risk that we were not willing to sign up for. Now, all of a sudden, I feel like in today's mentality, and I'm hearing this from customers, I'm hearing this from prospects that we're talking to on a daily basis, where people are wanting and putting into production bleeding edge technology that has not been well thought out, checked out, secured, and all of the, like, you fill in the blank.
Yep.
We have skipped a
Yep.
whole bunch of the processes that were in place at one point in time.
Yep.
And we've almost forgot that the reasons why we put those processes in place.
I couldn't agree more. I think the so there's a couple of things that we got a few minutes left at the top of the hour, and I want to start to wrap a bow around this, right? I think that there's, you said something important that I want to drill home to chat, right? This is the career you've chosen. And this is why, like, there were some conversations about warfare education in chat. This is why I always attest that, like, cybersecurity is the closest thing to warfare that you can have in terms of how you frame your mentality, how you frame your strategies, how you frame your doctrine, because it is ongoing. It is ongoing.
Yes.
There is an adversary that is constantly trying to win the battle every single day.
Yes.
And you are the closest thing to cyber warfare operators that the civilian sector has, right?
Yeah.
And so I do think that that's why we're trying to encourage you that you've got to be always on, as tiring as that may be, but that is because the adversary is always on, as Jason can attest to with this latest SharePoint vulnerability.
Yeah. And I want to make this a point. There are software and technologies out there that are not enterprise pricey. And what I mean by that is I've been in Neal and I have been in the enterprise software cybersecurity space long enough where it's like, oh, well, if this really works and it works really well and it works fast, there's this concept in the space that says time to value.
Right.
And if it's valuable enough, people are willing to pay for it.
Yeah.
Well, that may be true, but it doesn't need to be like $1 million or multi-millions of dollars in order for you to get your hands on software and technology that works, right?
100%.
And so if don't get just stuck on one company or one quote or one finding, right?
Yeah.
I would encourage you to go out in the space. And I'm not trying to pump BitLift here, but there are companies like BitLift and other companies out there in the space that offer affordable solutions that do just as good a job, sometimes even better job.
Sometimes even better,
right?
Yeah.
Sometimes this is a point where, like, a big ship is hard to move. And if the cybersecurity company and software company that you're looking at and talking to are big, thousands of employees, it doesn't necessarily always mean that they are good.
I learned this when I was building the security team at Mondelez. I had a massive budget at Abbott, but when I was building at Mondelez, I was forced into a smaller budget, which was a godsend I didn't recognize at the time because it forced me to look at startups. And the amount of good quality software that I found for enterprises when I was looking at startups was absolutely amazing.
Yeah. And it's great. People are you've given people the ability to think, be creative, And then, if something is costing $1, $2, $3, $5, $10 price per user per month, or whatever the case may be, my point is on all of that is you can find things out there just because it might be inexpensive or lesser than what you thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
Test it out.
Yeah.
Run a a 3-month, 6-month test trial of it. But here's the thing. Don't be afraid to test things. Don't be afraid to have A/B testing.
Yeah.
Because this is a world in cybersecurity where you hold a career that you need to be able to test things.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
real quick parting words. This question on screen, this is a good one for you, Jason. I've got some cynical thoughts on this one. What if a company refuses to fix a vulnerability that's been there for years in their software? Right? Like what if you come across a vulnerability as a cybersecurity person? What's your thoughts on responsible disclosure?
So I'm pretty I'm black and white on this. One, if you've notified them, they haven't fixed the vulnerability, and then you need to assess the risk. Is the risk acceptable to you or not acceptable to you? What does it open you up to? 3, if I am the CEO of, like, say, the company that you're working for, and you found, what we would work through is like, what's our path to get off the software? Mm-hmm. Does this company not care enough to fix this problem? And if this risk is unacceptable to us as a company, well, then what's our path to get off of it? Because I want to be working with people in companies that take cybersecurity seriously and not overlook vulnerabilities, and that we've told them about.
Yeah.
And then I am also of the opinion, I'm not going to fix somebody else's garbage.
That's right.
I'll tell you about it. We'll be friendly. We'll be a partner with you on it. But if your garbage doesn't get fixed, we're going to leave, and we're not going to be a customer anymore.
It's guilt by association at that point. It's guilt by association.
Yes.
Absolutely. All right, Jason, excellent stream today, buddy. Chad, don't go anywhere. We're going to go see Brian over on his channel. He's doing a co-working stream, so we're going to go hang out with Brian here in a little bit. That being said, Jason, thank you as always. We've got the giveaways going inside of chat. Make sure you're inside of Discord. If we get a mod to smash the Discord button again really quick on there, head over to Discord, go to the giveaways channel, participate in that one. Jason, I love you, buddy. You're awesome.
Yeah. You too, man. Love you too, man.
We'll see you in two weeks. Everybody who's in Twitch, we're gonna go ahead and start raiding a Beard Sec over there. Go hang out with him as he co-works and finishes out his day. Thanks to everybody who's been tuning into my co-working streams. It has truly helped me be way more productive. Jason, I don't know if you caught this. I'm doing co-working streams now where I sit here and I do work during the day and stream it. It's actually been hyper productive. So I appreciate everybody who's tuned in for that one. With that being said, Jason and I, we're out.
Awesome. Take care.